Yo! So it's still Friday. It's the day after the remap. And remap went well, didn't blow up. But we have a slight issue. And that slight issue is between 1800 and 2000 RPM, we've got a bit of a vibration coming through. Now, only really noticeable in 4th and 5th gear. Only really when you're giving it full throttle as well. So, what I thought would be a bit of a laugh is I thought I'd put this onto Facebook and go, without removing your remap, what does anyone know about other issues concerning this? So we had crap remap, crap remap, crap remap, remove remap, I know all about remaps, and so it went on. And I got the popcorn out and I was just sitting back and watching. So it was really quite funny because the amount of living room mechanics who seemed to be remap experts was amazing. And the reality is that 90% of what went on that post was utter crap.
Yeah it was.
Utter crap.
It was.
So, let's talk about what goes on here, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what a remap is and whether it's good or bad. Okay? Now, we're not saying that everyone in the market does a good job.
They don't.
Not at all. There are a lot of sharks out there, but bearing in mind that I care about my van and I started Dubsta and I'm about doing things well, did anyone think that I was going to go and get a remap from a shark?
No, not even.
Just wasn't going to happen. So, what I did was did my research and went to someone who was recommended. Okay? Now, I nearly did it when I first got the van. And the guys I went to then have a certain brand of remap. And they said to me at the time, don't do it on an older high mileage van because it's not on the rolling road. It's literally just a memory flash. And they're not going to be able to see any problems before they start. So I took their advice and I was like, do you know what? They're good guys, because they didn't just take my money. They actually gave me some decent advice that made me stop and think about what I was doing.
Yeah, for real.
So over the next 6 months, I've taken my time to go, right, okay, obviously a remap is something that has some risk associated with it. So let's try and reduce that risk as much as we can. So I've kind of digressed a bit there. What is a remap? A remap is electronically changing how the engine works. You can do it for a variety of purposes, whether it be saving fuel, more performance, or even both. There's lots of reasons you might want to remap. Now, there's also a misunderstanding. Remaps is chipping, is tuning, it's just not something you should do to an engine. Well, let's stop that as well, because how do Volkswagen produce the same engine? Volkswagen just being an example, but obviously we're about Volkswagen. How do Volkswagen produce the same engine with different power outputs? The answer is
by tuning them
electronically.
Yeah, but closing the parameters is basically what a map is, right? So your parameter is here. You remap a vehicle, it will close the parameter here, so you will get a lot more benefits from it. So you'll get more torque, more miles an hour, better MPG in some cases.
So essentially, Volkswagen produced maybe 4 different engine variants that are all 2 litre TDI, all with different power outputs, with the same hardware. So how do they do that? They electronically map them. So remaps are rubbish compared to the biggest car manufacturer in the world uses electronic mapping to give engines different power outputs. Hold on, there's a bit of a disjoint here over the information, because I'm going with how Volkswagen do it.
Yeah, damn straight. Yeah.
It works. Clearly it works. Now, taking that into the consumer market, slightly different. So, when people are producing maps for vehicles that are aftermarket maps, someone has had to produce that. It's not a major manufacturer with millions and millions of pounds of research and everything else behind them. So, they will do them on the rolling road. They'll test them if they're a good agent or a good producer. And what they will output is something that is better for the vehicle, is better for the driving experience, and ideally better for fuel as well. But if you run a remap on an old vehicle that potentially has wear in other places in the engine, as with anything, if you turn the volume up, things start to shake. It works with speakers and they're not even mechanical. So when you apply mechanics and you've got lots and lots of moving, rotating parts, and you put twice as much power through them, then anything loose is going to start to vibrate.
Yep.
Now, vibrators have one purpose. Could be in the back of the van. Not with you, though.
What, your vibrator?
Yeah. Not with him.
Vibrations have two purposes.
Go on.
Apart from the obvious, I'm trying not to be rude.
You can be rude, just don't swear.
Okay. Vibrations have purposes of pleasure
Yeah.
in some cases,
Yep.
and purposes of displeasure in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's well presented.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I thought
basically, they can be good and bad.
Yeah.
Nice summary, that.
Did you like the way I worked it out?
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, a vibration in the car will normally tell you there's something wrong before it goes bang.
That's my input.
So, on the van, we've got a slight issue, which is this vibration that happens between 1800 and 2000 RPM. Now, Ian and I have both sat there last night and we have consulted people that we know, we've consulted the internet, we've hit Google pretty hard, we've hit the forums pretty hard, and
Yeah.
wow, the amount of disinformation out there is ridiculous.
There is a lot of trash. A hell
So,
of a lot.
the most common answer, that's your dual mass flywheel.
Mm.
Right, so what's the test for a dual mass flywheel, Ian, to make sure that people know whether their dual mass flywheel is in a good state or not?
To be fair, there's a couple of tests, and one of the most common ones is the drop off from the accelerator and the clutch.
Right?
Right, so it will rattle.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, you know, those are the two main ones, and then we've got the one that you're experiencing at the moment, which is the one at 1800. It goes from 1800 up to what is yours at RPM?
Sort of 2000-ish.
About 2000-ish. Of which that's what we think that is, that rumble that you're getting, don't we?
We do. But is that a result of a remap, a result of a bad dual mass flywheel, or a result of labouring the engine?
So with our intense investigation, right, intense, and speaking to
Should be called the Dubsta files, shouldn't it?
Right, yeah. Ryan's been
For those things that are unknown by everyone. But everyone's got an opinion on it. It's an alien! No, it's a fucking van. Oh, I swore.
Right, Ryan's been. I digress all the time. Jesus, you know when you're trying to get bits out and.
Yeah.
Anyway, where was I?
You were digressing.
Ryan's been speaking to, while I was away doing a bit of mechanics on some other vehicles. Ryan has spoke to a reliable contact actually, who seems to do remaps all the time, and he has said that this shake under labour is actually fairly common. Am I right?
He has said it's fairly common. Not only that, if I hadn't had the remap, that would have still been there.
Yeah.
It just would have been less detectable because there was less power running
That's right.
through.
Yeah. So less.
It's not necessarily that my dual mass flywheel's on the way out at all. It's that I'm putting my dual mass flywheel under load
extra pressure
at low revs.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's shaking itself to death. So the answer, which seems really unusual, but prepare yourselves.
Go for
Drive it harder.
it. Yeah.
Great!
Yeah.
So,
go for it.
I bought my van 10,000 miles ago. I have been taking it easy. I looked at the mileage on there. I was like, oh, it's got 140k on the clock. I should really take it gentle and not overdo it.
Yeah.
Wrong answer.
It is the wrong answer.
Completely the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Because diesel engines have more torque, they are able to pull through the gears at much lower revs. So if you're used to a petrol car, you think that's okay. What you don't realise is that a diesel is also rattly as hell. So the natural vibrations caused by the engine and the gearbox are amplified. You put the vehicle under load, they're amplified even worse. And if you're not very careful, you'll end up blowing your DMF to bits, which will be an expensive replacement.
So those are bad vibrations.
They are bad vibrations. I just want to touch on one more bit on this before you digress a little and talk about good vibrations.
You want to touch me, did you say?
Not on this occasion.
Oh, damn it.
No. So what we have ascertained here is that a lot of people who have suffered from these vibrations, particularly after remap, are people who drive really gently.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the average driver of a T5, T5.1, T6 transporter,
Yeah.
their average, they're normally of a certain age,
Yeah.
without being ageist. They're the only bloody people who can afford them. So, they've also got a lot of weight in there.
To be honest.
It's true, we all know they're overpriced. That's why we end up building our own and they look like this rather than looking like they show home inside.
Yeah.
So, they drive a little bit differently. They do tend to take it a bit more careful in their vehicle. And because they've got a lot of weight in there as well, then they become a bit more nervy of the brakes because the van takes a bit longer to slow down. It's got more weight in it, of course. Things are shaking and rattling in the back because it's a camper full of stuff. So they drive a little slower.
Yeah.
Excuse me. All of this makes a lot of sense. Because what we end up with is a huge amount of transporter drivers driving their vehicles fairly slowly. They feel like they're a bit gutless because they're not actually giving them any revs and they've got loads of weight in there. So they get them remapped, they continue to drive them the same way, and then the DMF gives up. Do you almost fly, Bill? Then they end up with a big bill. And they go, sounds like your DMF, mate.
Yeah.
Definitely sounds like your DMF.
Yeah. It's like that old advert, isn't it? Oh, dodgy solenoid.
So, moral of the story, drive it like it's stolen, give it a few more revs. It'll also help you with your EGR issues and all of that stuff as well. These vans are meant to be revved. That's why the rev range goes up to 4,500 before the red line.
A lot.
If you're changing gear below 2,000 all the time, your engine is not working the way it's meant to be working. So,
that's a true story.
drive them a little bit harder, you should get less issues.
Yep.
So, good vibrations.
Good vibration.
That's Soul to Soul.
No, that's the Beach Boys, man. Soul to soul.
Didn't they do good vibrations as well?
No.
Or was it? Who was it?
What, Good Vibrations?
Yeah.
Well, it was the Beach Boys.
Yeah, but there was a woman who sang it as well in about like the late 80s, early 90s.
I don't know, mate.
I'm not going to vocalise it because this will just get unliked.
You know, that's a fair point. I've never heard you sing.
On that note, have a good weekend. And I might go to karaoke tonight.
Okie dokie.
You're right. See you later.